Hi, people here in the future who are not watching us because we are not on video right now. Welcome to the fun that is Lila and Naomi. Adventures in expansion and growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're talking about judgment again this week because there's so much judgment. Such a fun topic.
It's such a multifaceted conversation that one 30-minute conversation really doesn't hit all the things, right?
Especially when we have such fancy judgy pants.
I'm wearing very fancy pants today, so that's actually very applicable. They're not my judgy pants, but yeah, we do have fancy judgy pants too. Well, and like we talked about last week, for those of you who missed the call, you'll want to go back and hear that. We talked about the fact that judgment isn't always, I know for me, I used to always think judgment meant something negative, something bad, but everything's a judgment. Ooh, that tree is a really outside, I'm in my mobile office today, that tree outside my car right now, that's a really pretty tree. That's a judgment. It's not a fact. It's an opinion and a judgment. That tree is a good tree. It's good that we have trees. That's a judgment. It can be backed by all sorts of science, yeah, and it's still a judgment. And so, Lila, that shirt color looks really great on you. It's the judgment. It doesn't mean that it's bad, but I think in our heads, what we talked about last week is that sometimes we can assume that a judgment is bad. We also talked a little bit about judging other people and touched on judgment of ourselves. And all in 30 minutes. That's a quick time for so many facets and such a deep conversation.
Absolutely.
So what came up for you this week around judgments, Miss Lila?
What doesn't? I am struggling for words because 45 different things just merged together in my head all at once. And I was like, what do I want to talk about?
Whoa, wow. Yeah.
And what have I already talked about? And did we record that conversation, or was it just me and you talking about that particular thing? I don't know what came up, honestly. I think the thing that's right in the front of my mind at the moment is the livelihood that I am creating. And there's a lot of judgment with money. There's a lot of judgment with work and livelihood. Just before the call, I saw someone's post who was offering a different take on the 9-to-5 experience and saying, let's stop calling it the rat race. And I found myself going, wow, that's interesting. Because for me, any workday longer than a 6-hour workday is certainly a rat race. My judgment. And then you and I privately had a conversation, a political conversation that left me thinking, wow, I do have a lot of judgment around this particular topic. And that actually has been pretty huge because I have been very myopic in that arena. I'm always myopic politically. I absolutely love Barack Obama. He's my favorite president in the whole wide world. I love him so much. And like with Clinton, I was like, oh, I loved Clinton, but there was this thing. With Barack, I'm just like, oh, I love Barack. And my enjoyable other, when I told him about our conversation, said, there are people who, no matter how amazing Barack was for some of us, no matter what great things he did for the country, will only hate him because fill in the blank, because of their perspective, because of their judgments of who he is and how he is and what he stood for or whatever. And it just, like, I knew that I had this point of view, but I had not been aware that I was not even open to another point of view politically. Mm-hmm. And that was huge. And we all know how resistance in one area will carry over, especially if we're giving that resistance any sort of attention. So if I'm over here pushing against politics and policy and blah, 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 I'm sure keeping abundance and prosperity and joy and love out of my life over here, because resistance is resistance. So that was pretty huge for me. And a reminder to stay off the topic of politics, because I don't have any positive judgments about it at the moment.
Well, and it brings up, as you say all that, it brings up an interesting thing with the whole, if I've got resistance in one area, it blocks my, I'm going to use the word ability, my attract ability, my openness to receiving in other areas. Because if we're blocked in one area, it seeps into other areas. Even if it's not completely pervasive in another area, it seeps into. It's that whole how you do anything, how you do everything. And if there's resistance in one space, chances are there will be resistance in another. So what came up for me is great. And that doesn't mean stop having opinions about, I'm with you, Brock. I don't know who I crush on more, him or Michelle. But that's,
Oh my gosh. And together, we don't have time for this.
Yeah. Lila and Naomi about to get stupid on here. But it doesn't mean that letting go of the resistance and the judgment doesn't mean changing your opinion. And there was kind of this aha as you were saying all that. Because it's like, so if I'm resistant in this area, and we'll just keep using that example because it's A, you said it, and B, I think it's one that people can relate to mostly. Not having resistance doesn't mean changing your opinion and or allegiances, and or you can still, it's just about not judging someone else for having theirs. It's not, it's about not having judgment. It's like, yes, do I believe that Barack was a good president? Absolutely. Do I think he did every single thing perfectly as a president? No. Do I think that the fact that he wore flip-flops in Hawaii on vacation didn't mean fuck for his presidency? Yeah, that was even a newsworthy thing, was dumb in my opinion. That's a judgment. So, but that's a judgment. But it doesn't mean for me to let go of resistance. Means I have to say, and that means I love the current administration and all the political BS that's happening in our country, not just with the Republicans, not just with Democrats, not just in general. It doesn't mean that I have to be like, oh, so that means I'm okay with what's going on. No, I don't have to be okay with what's going on because it may not align with my values. And to say I'm okay with it will bump up against my value system. It's, can I let go of the judgments about the other people, the people involved in those political things, the people who support the people in those political arenas? Can I let go of my judgment around them?
Oh my goodness. So there's a regular exercise in that for me. And I think that's kind of how we started on this conversation, how our high horses are unicorns.
Oh, yeah.
So I am not thrilled with the current administration. And I'll leave it at that. I will not soapbox. And I have a friend that I genuinely consider a friend who voted in this particular administration. And every time that they do something that I judge to be stupid, that is going to affect the life and livelihood of this very person, I am reminded of how I get to practice non-judgment. I fail, y'all. Let's just be honest. I fail. I get judgy, and I'm like, listen, this is your fault. Not in those exact words or in that exact tone, but that is like what's behind it. And this conversation that you and I have been having has helped me like hop down off my unicorn and take some deep breaths. You know, everybody's point of view is valid for them, and we all get to live out our experiences and our choices. But yeah.
And sometimes that's easier said than done. And to take it off the political side of things, if people are like, yeah, but politics, yeah, you can transplant this and translate it to any situation. Boy, I think my boss did something really stupid, and I don't understand why they feel the need to put these processes in place. It's absolutely asinine. And just so you people know, I work for myself, so this is a made-up scenario. I'm pulling from a past corporate experience. We'll just say that. Yeah, in case somebody's like, oh my God, she's going to get fired. Nope. This is but if you've ever had a corporate job, there's been something within that company, chances are, that you've thought, well, that is a really stupid way to do things, or that's a really dumb policy, or whatever it is.
I'm not going to get fired. I have to do more than talk about how much I hate our schedule to get fired. So
yeah, it can be scheduling. I used to work for a company, and I was a contractor, so I kind of got to come and go as I pleased. They wanted their salaried employees to clock in and out, and I'm like,
but why though?
Right? I'm like, you kidding me right now? And some of the stuff, and so when they offered me a full-time job, of course, I said no, thank you.
No, thank you.
And so we can translate it into something like that. I have judgments about that. I think you're stupid for doing that. I think you're dumb. That's my judgment. And being in judgment instead of, like, Lila is just a master at the whole, well, that's an interesting point of view. When I can step out of the emotion and judgment of it and accept it as someone else's point of view, it doesn't mean I have to make myself wrong for having my point of view, nor does it mean I have to agree with their point of view. It's about making them wrong for believing what they believe.
Yeah, and that's what creates the resistance.
Yeah.
So that's when we go from interesting point of view into judgment.
Into wrong point of view.
I love
That's not an interesting point of view. That's a dumb point of view. That's a wrong point of view. Yeah, there's the judgment. And that's where the energy blocks are.
Yes.
And we may go a little deeper into this next week too, that we can have those judgments about other people, but we can have them about ourselves.
Oh my gosh, I was so good at that.
I did that. Right? One of the things I noticed for myself this week is when my food is off, if I'm hungry or if I'm tired, that shit shows up in a big way. So it's like, okay. Yeah, so when I'm not giving my body what it needs, like right now, I'm feeling pretty good about things. I got my sassy, I do have sassy pants on. If only you guys could see them. We call these my Wonder Woman leggings. They've got all these shooting star amazingness, and I'm feeling sassy. Today's been a great day. I've gotten business done. I've connected with some people. I'm going to see family. You know, it's a great day. I'm in a good mood. Mm-hmm. And I'm recognizing that when my food gets off, or if I'm tired, I could have been in a great mood and nothing, quote, bad has happened. And all of a sudden, my internal dialogue is like super judgy. I'm not making as much money as Lila. I suck. I can't do this manifesting thing. I can't this. I don't that. And it's like, oh my God, the inner nag won't shut up. So there's a great
the inner nag. I love it.
Oh my God, I got an inner bitchy girl like you wouldn't believe.
Feed the inner nag.
Yeah, the inner nag instead of the internet. And it's amazing how self-care really helps shift self-talk for me.
Mm-hmm. That's legit.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I had not thought about that, but it's so true.
Yeah, and for me, that was something, because I've been, since our conversation last week, didn't want to just have the judgment conversation and then be like, oh, well, you know, that was a great call. Actually paying attention to where are the judgments showing up? Mm-hmm. What can I do to shift those judgments into, that's an interesting perspective? Where can I employ a little grace to allow other people to have their perspective, whether I agree with it or I don't agree with it? Because I can still disagree with it and not make them wrong. Yeah. And I started noticing, okay, so if we're talking judgment, where's the self-judgment showing up? And that had me paying more attention to when it shows up. And typically it's much more prevalent if, again, my food, if I'm needing to eat, which means my blood sugar is probably all out of whack, or if I'm needing to go to bed and get some rest. So guess what I'm going to focus on this week?
Feeding the inner nag?
By feeding my body and getting some rest. Yeah, quieting her.
Just give her a Snickers. She'll be fine.
Right? That commercial is so spot on too, right? Here, have a Snickers. Yeah. Well, minus the Snickers part, but here, have a green smoothie.
Right?
So,
absolutely. For me, it's, you know, here, have a mug of, have a mug. I was thinking golden milk. Have a bowl of oatmeal.
Yes.
Or a mug of oatmeal, if that makes you happy.
I actually do often make mine in a great big giant mug that we have. So, yeah.
I need a giant mug in my life. I've been pondering while you were talking and I was listening. I was also wondering, like, where am I with self-judgment now? I remember being really excellent at it. And my favorite self-judgment was I fuck everything up.
Oh, wow. That's pretty big and broad.
Oh, yes. Let's just take all of the responsibility for everything.
Wow.
And I remember being rather annoyed with myself for this perspective and sitting myself down with a stack of paper because I was going to, you know, really get my shit together. I'm going to stop fucking everything up and just like pick a thing. So
and just fuck up one?
Just one thing, not everything. Okay. So I sat down with my thick stack of paper, like half a pack of loose leaf paper, because I knew this was going to be an intense list. And I started writing. I wrote down 4 things and I could not think of anything else.
Oh
For
my
like
God,
20
really?
minutes, I just stared at the paper like, well, aren't we absurd?
Wow. So, in NLP, we call the everythings and everybody and all the people, we call them universal quantifiers. It's like the best coffee in the world. Really? You serve the best coffee in the world. Has it all been tested? Everybody
Right.
thinks this way. Nobody likes blah, blah, blah. The universal quantifiers. So here you are. You fuck up everything. But when it comes down to it, you could only come up with 4. Wow.
I was really good at being mean to myself and seeing only the flaws.
Yeah, well, and then when you took a real look at it, and I'm not saying that those 4 things you had listed were flaws, and you were only able to come up with 4.
Right.
That's
And then
pretty
I had to
fucking
shut up.
awesome, really. Right. Oh, see, yeah.
Yeah.
Then
I was just like, oh, well, I mean, in all fairness, that's not so horrible. That could be worse. Actually doing pretty good there because, yeah, single mom living in transitional housing. Yeah, I'm going to cut myself a break here.
just like, God, just single mom. You could just leave it at that. Cut yourself a break. So single moms listening, cut yourself a break.
Yeah. So that slowed down the self-judgment train immensely. And that was maybe 11 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of self-judgment lately. There's a lot of personal responsibility, which is a different dynamic.
Yes.
I just gonna tell the whole world my whole life right now. So my client said, hey, don't forget, you need to do this thing with money. And I was like, I'm really okay with money right now. And she was like, I see. I haven't been in a rush to pay myself. Not that I'm not going to pay myself, but this particular client and I have a relationship. We've been together for a little while. I know that I'll get paid. I'm not really in a rush for it to have a little bit of a cushion. It's fine. It's fine. My manager today, when she asked me if I could work Friday afternoon because 3 of my coworkers had deaths this week in their family and were short-staffed, and I'm like, oh, well, I suppose. And she goes, it's extra money. I was like, I don't need the money.
And what a great shift.
I love that I'm in this place. I appreciate that I'm in this place. I have mountains of delight around being in this place. My client, when I relayed that conversation to her, said, so when are you quitting? Like the day job? And I said, funny you should ask. When I put 25 people into this program, I'm about to launch them out. But, there's the personal responsibility of taking charge of my finances, of deciding that I am done not having money, that no matter what it takes, I am creating this 10% fund. And I started my 10% fund when I had 0 income, 0 reliable income. I did not have a job when I started my 10% fund. I think the 10% fund got me a job. I took 10% of what I had on hand and set it aside. Its sole purpose is that I have money. So as long as I have this $70, I have money. And that has since multiplied exponentially, and keeps multiplying because I have decided that I have money. And so now that is my reality. And the same, financial responsibility comes into play with now creating a freedom-based livelihood. Now that I have created this next egg, now that I have this vibration where I was going through my business account and I received over $1,000 in gifts of cash last year. And being in a space of being like, wow, that is amazing.
That's awesome.
How can I duplicate that exponentially this year as well? But that was, making a decision, taking a responsibility. And there are other areas of my life that I've done the same thing. So when we move out of judgment and into personal responsibility, it's a different conversation. It's not I'm horrible, I'm terrible, I always fuck everything up conversation. It's I don't love this particular experience. I'm not thrilled about going out in below zero temperatures tomorrow to the day job. So how can I outcreate the day job?
Yeah, so that next time it's 5 billion degrees below zero where you live, holy mother. You can be like, I'm working from the couch today. Yeah. And
yeah,
I think that's something you said is I think a really key piece. Now, my half side encourages all of his clients to create what he calls a win book, and which is different from a gratitude book. A win book is writing down your wins. Some days it might be, oh, I got the freaking laundry done. Other days it might be, you know what? I started going into this judgy conversation about myself, and instead I turned the dialogue around to look at how I am currently managing my money and slowly repaying the people I owe. Yay me. It's about using since we were on the debt conversation, that's an easy one for people, I think, to relate to and understand. Maybe it's, oh, my kids didn't pick up their room, and normally I'd yell at them and ground them, and instead we had a conversation and it was calm and they actually picked up their crap. It's about what are you winning at that you set out to do. Not to say I'm doing it all perfectly, but it's a great tool to have on those days or those moments when you are thinking, oh, I fuck everything up. I mean, wow, that's a heavy thing to be carrying around, that judgment.
Always, by the way,
always fuck everything up. Yeah. So 2 universal quantifiers in one freaking sentence that has you being, the worst person on the planet as far as how it feels when you're carrying that. Those are heavy stones in your backpack.
Mm-hmm. So it was not a thrilling life.
No. So, and sometimes it's the little shifts that make up the bigger shifts. Just noticing, like for me this week, that notice of, oh my God, where's all this? Bear asked me last night, he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. and he's like, well, what's wrong? Do you want to talk about it? I'm like, no, I need to go to bed. And what I realized is it's like I was tired. So my internal dialogue started getting really poopy. And it was just like, what in the heck? And I recognized I'm tired. And so when I'm tired, everything becomes Chicken Little, or I space out, one of the two. And it's like, oh, okay. So before I went to bed, I took a look at that and it's like, okay, is any of that true? How much of that is true? And I had to look at what's the truth of it? There wasn't truth of it. And there was the actual, because it was all about certain monies that I'm working to pay back, and feeling like crap because I, got to this point and yeah. And I had to stop and give myself credit. I paid off one debt this week.
Whoa.
right? It was a small debt, but I paid it off. So
Yeah.
I got to mark in my little tracker, that that's paid in full. How freaking awesome is that? So I'm like,
that's
okay.
Phenomenal. Congratulations.
Right? Thank you very much. So it was about shifting that perspective. Like you were saying earlier, instead of beating myself up for being horrible, for being this, for being that, whatever it is that your judgment conversation, your inner nag says, I had to shift that for myself so that going to bed, I could go to bed free and clear and energetically not be bringing that with me to my restful time.
Absolutely.
It's like your your half a stack of paper ended up being 4 things, It's when we look at the reality of it, sometimes in our head, crap gets blown out of proportion versus the reality when we get it on paper and we're honest with ourselves.
Absolutely.
So my question that comes up is, where are you, dear listeners, and also Lila and Naomi, where are you being judgmental with yourself or even with someone else? When it's with yourself, where can you let go of that judgment and give yourself the kudos that you've been ignoring? And if it's with other people, how can you let go of your judgment around their opinions that might differ from yours without sacrificing your values? Doesn't mean you have to change your mind on whatever it is, but letting go of the judgment. Great things to practice this week, I think.
I will certainly be playing with that.
I think even doing your exercise, I like that idea.
Humans.
Yeah, I got 2 legs just like everybody else.
Right? Well, thank you everybody for listening. That sounds like a solid place to stop this week's conversation. We will be back next week with judgment reports.
And we're going to be waiting to hear when you're giving your notice too, by the way.
And more tools. No peer pressure at all, or the best kind of peer pressure.
The best kind of peer pressure.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet.
Bye, everybody. We will talk with you next week.
Bye.